Why does Singapore have the secret to longevity? And is it one of the countries where people can actually live longer? This Asian territory has one of the lowest mortality rates in the world and a higher life expectancy than the rest of the planet's citizens. Most people seek to live a long and healthy life, with lifestyles that influence both the years we live and the quality of life we have. Methods to burn fat, reduce diseases, or delay aging are the most sought after, although some of the secrets of longevity are kept by Singapore, one of the countries where people live the longest and happiest lives. Singapore has one of the lowest infant and maternal mortality rates in the world. The inhabitants of the small territory reach an average age of 84.19 years, according to data from 2024, a very high life expectancy compared to the rest of the planet's citizens. According to Dan Buettner, founder of Blue Zones LLC and author of several books to Fortune, life expectancy has increased by up to 20 years since 1960 in Singapore, and the number of centenarians has doubled in the last decade. Buettner included the country in his book, The Blue Zones, The Secrets for Living Longer, in which he explains which cities and places in the world allow their citizens to be happier and healthier. Thus, he clarifies that the increase in longevity and improved standard of living in Singapore comes from changes implemented over time. Full of skyscrapers, private jets, and Rolls-Royces, Singapore is the third richest country in the world, barely surpassed by Luxembourg and Ireland, according to the purchasing power of its inhabitants. Known as the Pearl of Asia, this tiny city-state with just 5.6 million inhabitants is currently one of the largest financial centers in the world, the place that produces the most millionaires and the most expensive to live in, according to a study by the Economist Intelligence Unit. But half a century ago, it was a poor island with very few natural resources, which did not promise a great future. So, how did Singapore go from being a poor island to one of the richest countries in the world? And why are its inhabitants now on the lists of the oldest countries in the world? Stay, because in this video, we're going to answer these questions. So let's get started. After leaving British rule behind and achieving independence from Malaysia in 1965, Singapore became an autonomous state led by Lee Kuan Yew. The man, who held the position of Prime Minister for more than 30 years, is the architect of the so-called economic miracle. Lee designed a broad reform program to lift Singapore out of what he described as a cesspool of misery and degradation, and turned it into an industrialized and modern country under a capitalist model with tight state control. Singapore has a strategic geographical location right in the most populated and fastest-growing area in the world. Linda Lim, a professor specializing in the political economy of Southeast Asia at the University of Michigan, tells BBC Mundo. This location has allowed it to be on a key marketing route between giants such as China, India, and Southeast Asia. Since the late 1960s, the government promoted large employment programs and the construction of social housing, a social policy that went hand in hand with strict control of private life and the suppression of individual freedoms, including the arrest of opponents without taking them to trial and the application of corporal punishment. There were even explicit orders on how to be polite and even how to clean the sink. Over time, the country impressed the world with its high levels of education, healthcare, and economic competitiveness, while attacking corruption, considered an endemic evil in the former colony. Now, if you're finding this video insightful so far, please like it. It would mean a lot to us. In the early stage of development, Singapore dedicated itself to the production of labor-intensive manufacturing for export to developed country markets. But towards the end of the 1990s, the country entered a new stage of economic transformation that led it to become a global financial center. Since then, it has not stopped growing. In addition to geographical location, Singapore has a number of comparative advantages, experts say. These include a population capable of speaking Chinese and English, strong functioning institutions, and an absence of corruption, explains Professor Lim. Added to this is a strong social investment in housing, health, and education, which was put into practice from the beginning of the economic transformation program. In parallel, Singapore provided generous incentives to foreign investors to settle in the country, adds Lim, allowed the free flow of capital, and signed important free trade agreements with the United States, China, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, and the European Union. Analysts agree that Singapore's economic success is due in part to the fact that measures to boost growth began more than half a century ago. The government implemented a series of policies at the beginning of the independence era to support critical industries, explains Joshua Kurlansik, a researcher at the Council on Foreign Relations think tank. They built an excellent education system and created incentives to attract foreign companies, adds the expert, measures that contributed to Singapore becoming a center for foreign investment today, with offices of multinational companies installed in its territory. Another element mentioned by some analysts is that Singapore has not faced major enemies who try to stop its development policy. It had the protection of the United States as a backdrop, says Tyler Cowan, an economics professor at George Mason University and a Bloomberg columnist. And among the reasons that explain its success, Cowan mentions investment in human capital, in addition to very good governance and economic policy from the beginning, together with a predictable business environment. These were in the right place at the right time, when the rest of Asia was also beginning to grow, he adds. Aside from its economic success, Singapore is the international epicenter of how other countries should adjust their policies to promote healthier lives among their citizens. These are the secrets to longevity and healthy living. This refers to policies aimed at the people of this country, who author Dan Buettner believes really want to make healthy changes. For example, the island taxes vehicles and gasoline, which leads to investment in public transportation systems. There are more and more pedestrians and people who prefer to go to work or directly incorporate physical exercise into their daily routine. In Singapore, cigarettes and alcohol are heavily taxed and cost much more than in other countries, and other unhealthy vices are also difficult to maintain. The country advocates healthy lifestyle habits, focusing on its inhabitants achieving optimal health and well-being. On the other hand, this Asian territory subsidizes healthy foods, which encourages people to buy whole foods with abundant nutrients, superfoods, or fat-free meals. The Singapore government also reduced the amount of sugar in drinks and added healthy food labels to items, limiting sugar, fat, or sodium. Likewise, the country is committed to culture and a more accessible urban environment, according to the BBC. For context, a therapeutic park was opened, designed to reduce stress and improve mental health in adults. In addition, it's also made preventative medicine the center of its health system. But there are also other investments in health, such as combating loneliness. Singapore plays an important role in people's sense of community, with support systems so that its citizens, especially older ones, don't spend too much time alone. The country's architecture also helps, as most of its residents live in skyscrapers, and this means they always have someone nearby. Additionally, Singaporeans get a tax break if their elderly relatives live with them or near their homes. And trust in these policies explains how Singaporeans believe in the authorities' proposals to achieve a better lifestyle. According to a recent survey, 7 in 10 Singapore residents trust their government. With all this, you who are watching this video, I ask you, do you think your country should apply these types of policies to improve the health of its citizens? Let me know your answer in the comment box below. Also, if you're liking this video, I invite you to subscribe and leave your like for more videos like this one. With that, we'll see you next time.